Another thing, kind of while we're on this topic, is one thing you said that really stuck out to me is I was trying to do the guitar thing and it didn't really work out. So, like, I hate to say I used the sample, something along those lines. I feel like by taking the same approach, always think main five elements: drums, bass, chords, lead, vocals. Okay. So
Right.
that's how you split your all of your channels into five groups. Maybe you have an effects group, whatever. But I'm always going to talk about the main five: drums, bass. You could think of drummer, bassist, rhythm guitar player, lead guitar player, vocalist. Except they can be made of samples and like crazy shit. So with your melody, there's no shame in using the guitar loop, but when you're choosing your layers and stacking these things, also think primary, secondary, background. When you're doing your drums, think primary, secondary, background. Same with effects. Have some loud shit, have some medium shit, have some really quiet shit. Push the whole dynamic range from minus like 60 to 0 and split that into 3 volume groups. And then that way each five of those elements can have the richness and the detail it needs, and your goal is to make those 20 channels of drums sound like it's 5 channels, but you're mixing in shit subtly and quietly, and some secondary stuff that's noticeable but not like main. And through a combination of, so now you have arrangement which slices your grid up this way: main 5 elements, arrangement. Now you have a cube, a sliced grid that you're kind of filling. And in any given section, you could be like, okay, intro, no drums. And then pre, I want drums. Chorus, I want drums. Okay, so maybe the drums could go up a notch. I'll add more like secondary level shit in the chorus. You'll always need the primary main loud volume shit going on. That's kind of the bread and butter. But you could be like, all right, for the pre, I'll just do primary and uh background, right? And then for the chorus, I'm gonna bring in the secondary shit because it's louder, it's gonna pop more. And then bass is usually just it's a mono in not mono. Yeah, it's monophonic. So it's one voice. So you're never gonna be playing bass chords and shit. So really with the bass, typically I don't really have like a background bass that's minus 60, but I will have like maybe in the pre, if I want it to feel like no bass, that means like bass at minus 20 dB instead of minus 6, or minus 30 dB instead of minus 8, whatever it's at. Then like your chords and shit, like you could have changing chord progressions through the song if you want, but like if you want the guitars to like pop more in the drop, you could just duplicate the channel, pitch them up 12, EQ it to get rid of the garbage and the extreme highs. And now you have a layer that's going to add a new level of brightness in this half, which is very distinctly the chorus. So you can give them a subtle boost, and you can add some like background layers too, like especially as you get into verse 2, bridge, you can start adding the background shit, and now you have 3 levels to play with the chords. Same with the lead. And you don't always got to use the 3 levels for everything. It's just like the lead, for example, it might not be in every section. It might be in 2 out of every 4 sections as it repeats. So you can, there's other techniques you could do, but layering is really powerful here. Same with the main vocal. Just use the channels for you to add the detail to the song, but to the listener, it should sound like one thing still. You're kind of producing this in a way as if like the one thing for each thing, like the sample that you pull out is going to be the one thing, but you create the one chord progression, the one lead, the one drum kit through 20 layers, which has primary, secondary, background. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That
Cool.
actually
And
helps
then
a
as
lot
you
too.
progress through the arrangement, you have a lot of options available. Like the drum example I gave in the chords, like if you want a simple ass light raise to the chords, just add a second layer that's the same octave. If you want slightly more, add a layer that's an octave above. or 2 octaves above, or from the verse, just have the normal octave and then layered in with 1 octave above. And now we're in the chorus and there's 2 octaves of chord, like 3 total, right?
Yeah,
Two
yeah, yeah,
on
for
top of the
sure.
original one. And you can mix it in a way where it's really subtle. Maybe the first one is -8 and the next one is like -20 and the third one is like -48 and you don't even really notice the -48, but you give a little teensy boost, barely noticeable boost to the drums, barely noticeable boost to the chords, barely noticeable boost to the vocals. That's a big difference. You
And you
feel
can
me?
get and you give that boost through this hierarchy within each group of
Yes, of
of
creating depth.
sound. So I could uh, do like a small reverb or like yeah, like you said, almost like a small vocal impact on the snare or something, and that could be further back in the background in the hierarchy within the drums. And then whenever I choose, take that out for it to sound dry to minimize that energy there, or add it in at the drop so it sounds more full, or almost like some of those metal drums where it goes and you get that pre like swing into the snare, um,
Yes.
which adds to it. Okay, because you're right. I am approaching it. The mentality was like do one layer of vocal so it sounds good, and then do like the high and the low harmony, and then yeah, up here I did do the oh shit, I did like octave up for the second what would be the drop area. Um, but yeah, like all this stuff, I could have other small even just effects, right? I mean, we're talking like delays or reverbs or washing it out. Or are you saying utilize more channels on top of that?
Yes, and
Yes, and yes,
so layering is one technique you could use for something like a lead, unless the lead is going on the whole song. Like in my opinion, layering works the best for the most ongoing elements. So vocals, drums, bass. Bass, you don't layer so much, but you could switch them out from section to section. That kind of leads into the next thing. Um, drums, vocals, chords, mainly. I would say that's what I do 90% of layering on because those are going to be going on the whole song. And to prevent them from getting boring, you want to make sure you have a combination of shit that's here, and shit that's way in the back. That way you have a lot more possibility in terms of, oh, I want to kick it up a notch this section. Is the notch this big or is the notch this big? And the more versatility you have in how much you can kick up the intensity at any given time, you have way more control to, let's say, that verse that you're talking about there that you feel like is losing momentum. If you
yeah,
have
yeah,
an ongoing thing that's working, you can really bring a lot of life into it just through emphasizing certain words or adding ad libs in the spaces or little shit like that, and it'll make the vocal much more dynamic. And maybe you're still in the mindset of that's 20 vocals, but I just think about when I close that group, it's one vocal, but it might be made of 20 that are mixed at different levels. And it's a way disproportional hierarchy. So the main vocal is going to be doing 90% of the heavy lifting. And then like the secondary are going to be doing like 8%. And then the background are going to do 2%. But it's
yeah.
really important to have all of them. And
Okay.
when I say those percentages, I'm talking about the the volume levels. So if 0 dB is here and minus whatever 60, let's say, you don't really got to think about lower than that, I would say. If you're utilizing 60 dB, you're in a way better place than if you're going from like 0 to 15. So imagine 0 to 60 on your levels. And then for each of those groups, for drums, ask yourself what's in the top third, what's in the second third, what's in the bottom third. For vocals, which layers are in the top third, bottom third, middle third. And the top third is going to be the loudest. It's going to be the most in your face. You're going to have to give the most attention to those main layers because they're the most obvious. They have the most character. They control the direction of the song because they're the loudest. But then the secondary stuff and the background stuff is there to support that. So you're not just hearing it the same way. You feel me? There's
Yeah, I did.
there, oh, you like this thing in the verse? Oh, well, bam. Here's a slightly better version of that. Stick around. Oh, you like that shit? You're still around? Bam. Now we're gonna kick it up fucking 5 notches and it's gonna be crazy. Like if you love that, just wait till the chorus. Like that's how you kind of want to present it and build these channels up. And so I think of mixers, mixer levels or whatever. Thirds, that's your primary, secondary background, and then consider that for drums, chords, vocals especially. The trick that works best on basses and leads, which are going to be more monophonic voices. I'm not saying leads can't ever have notes that are kind of chords or whatever and play together, but typically the lead line is a singular line and the bass line is a singular line. So the way that we achieve the best interest. So the reason I bring up that distinction is because the single line elements, bass and lead, you're not really going to have as much opportunities to do that level of layering. You feel me?
Yeah.
Because like
Yes.
you're not really gonna layer your bass. It just gets way too muddy in the low end. And same with the lead, like it's not gonna be playing the whole time. If it is, you could do that. If it's a more consistent kind of lead, then do that. But if it's just popping in like the chorus or post chorus or break, you might still layer it and mix it in that kind of hierarchy way, but you don't really need to use that technique the same way to add interest across sections. So again, think 5 elements, arrangement, and just master getting the depth in each of those 5 and find an arrangement that works for you, and then learn how to basically make each of those groups grow as the arrangement grows. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, are you about to go with these monophonic, like the bass? So
Oh
the
yeah.
way to keep it interesting is this through rhythmic change, or
Thanks for bringing me back on track.
yes,
So, say with like the lead, yeah, if you like layer it, then you can still get a really cool lead with just one kind of voice or whatever, one main thing. I'll show you some video examples later. But for example, you have a lead line that's just, I don't know, man, a lot of like house, big room house, let's say, where it's just like the lead and the drop, or it really works for any genre, but I'm just trying to think how to explain like where you have one sound that's going on the entire time that's just playing a cool melody. It might still be comprised of 3 different things, but it sounds like one thing. So in those cases, still mix it with the hierarchy in mind. But to add interest in the bass, I would also use volume to your advantage, but think more so about checkerboarding and changing the texture of the bass, switching to a different type of bass. Maybe it's acoustic in the pre because though it's a softer kind of sound, and then you have a saw bass in the drop, right?
yeah.
Um, for
I
lead,
never do that. I don't know why I don't do that. That's such a stark like juxtaposition. It's so strong, like
you'll
to the
love.
listener.
I'm starting to really, it's starting to make sense to me more than it has in a long time. Like at the very start, it's like you're like learning so much and you think you can just
Mm.
conquer the world right away. And then after a little while, you're like, oh, this is gonna be a lot harder. I feel like I'm at this new level where I'm starting to have confidence in my ability and also confidence in like, okay, like when do I do this? Why would I not do something? And to be more consistent
Mhm.
with my music. But I noticed like, wow, even from 1 to 7, there's a big difference in the technique that I'm doing and the leveling and the sound design.